How do I become a BIM expert fast? How do you develop your skills to the point where it is so obvious by looking at your resume and your portfolio that you know everything to do with BIM, to do with services coordination, to do with MEP theory, construction details, that companies pretty much look at your portfolio, look at your profile, give you interviews, give you jobs without you having to worry and actually fight for these jobs and struggle in the job market, right? You can't actually fake this, you have to learn it. So in this video, I'm going to break down all the MEPF fundamentals, tie it in to real world examples, and by the end of the video, you will be able to go through a BIM coordination example with me so that you understand everything in the ceiling space. No matter if you're an architect or an engineer or you want to get into the BIM industry, you will know exactly how a BIM coordinator thinks and what he or she needs to know in order to actually present themselves in a good and very logical and very knowledgeable manner. The way I'm going to go through the MEPF fundamentals in order to make you a BIM expert is by actually going through live photos of what you'll see on site, right? So these are the photos that you'll see on site, and I'll actually go through each of them for mechanical, electrical, hydraulics, and fire. Then we're going to tie them into an actual image of what you will see on BIM 360, like the actual coordination model. And then after that, we're going to do an exercise by going through an example, and I'm going to explain to you why the pipes are in the specific location they are in, why the cable trays are moving up, what the ductwork is, who's coordinating around what, and what the hierarchy is, right? So that's the most important thing you need to know. But in order for you to understand this image, you need to understand the fundamentals and how everything works on site as well, right? So in terms of the BIM fundamentals, right, this is the most important time in your life for you to learn this, because the BIM industry is actually going to be doubling from 2024 to 2029. There's going to be a doubling of this industry. And if you can catch this early, if you can learn Revit and BIM and coordination, right, you will be way ahead of anyone else. A few years ago, learning Revit was the biggest thing because learning Revit would give you an advantage over other people. Now, learning Revit is sort of a given. You have to do that. But the thing that's going to set you apart is learning the coordination skill set, learning how to coordinate between MEPF, right? Understanding, having a basic engineering understanding of what the different services are in the building, even as an architect, even as a surveyor, even as an estimator. You need to understand all of these things if you want to get into the BIM industry and actually do something that you love doing every single day, right? So in terms of the coordination stuff, this is also something that's happened recently. It's not something that's been going on for a long time, which is why I'm saying it's so important to catch onto this as soon as possible, right? So like BIM 360 was introduced in 2015. That's not too long ago, and it took years for companies to actually agree and adopt this as a widespread method where everyone's going to be using the coordination platform. So now people are starting to use it. It's becoming more mainstream. This is the key point where it's going to start to exponentiate and actually grow really quickly. So that's why I'm trying to teach all this stuff so you can learn this and you can actually get into these coordination positions and get paid a lot of money in the next 5 years before it becomes way too saturated for you to actually get into and you get left behind, right? So in terms of the MEPF fundamentals, you know that the BIM coordinator is going to be looking at a model. He is or she is going to be looking at the model, coordinating the model, making sure, pretty much the manager of the model, making sure the model is perfect and there are no clashes and the model looks healthy, right? If there's going to be a clash on the model, 100% there's going to be a clash on site. And you don't want to go on site and have issues on site. You want to make sure that the model is clash free, and then on site, we have everything perfectly installed, right? A lot of people don't understand what are mechanical, electrical, hydraulics, and what are they, right? And what do they look like? I have no idea. So what I'm going to do is go through each of these services. So mechanical is the most complex service because it's the largest in terms of size. And when you look at a 3D model, you'll see a lot of engineering services. Mechanical will take the most space because you have a lot of duct, you have different colors of duct, and sometimes it gets really confusing, right? So you know that mechanically, there will be different units. Air conditioning units. Mechanical is to do with air conditioning. So mechanically, there'll be different units. There'll be things like cassette units that looks like this. There's like air coming out the side over here and then air going into the unit over here, and it circulates the air over and over again and it brings in outside air. There's things called FCUs or fan coil units. I'm going to tell you these so you can go write them down and research about them, right? Fan coil units, FCU. And this is going to be at very high level. And this has its own filter inside, it has its own fan inside, and it's going to blow the air. It's going to take air from within the building, blow the air, cool the air down, heat the air up, whatever you want it to do, and then it's going to condition the whole space within the building, right? And then you have these other things like condenser units. You might have those small AC units that you have in your house that has the small remote, right? Those AC units have these condensers, and these condensers are located on the outside of the building. That's also a mechanical equipment because it's to do with air conditioning. You also have these really, really big air handling units. So for these air handling units, you might not have these small air conditioning units inside the building. Sometimes it's so complex. The solution for the air conditioning is so complex that we need to have something called an air handling unit. And these air handling units are brought in by cranes onto the top of the building level, like level 2, level 3, or like the roof level. And then on these you have outside air coming into the unit, and you have return air and you have supply air, right? So we're taking air from within the building, we're circulating it, like recycling it back into the building. We're taking air from outside the building, so we're giving fresh air, and then we're pumping it back into the building. So you have that whole process happening as well, right? So you have things on the roof, you have things on the ceiling, and these are the different units that you can have mechanically. So in terms of ductwork, all these units and all this air has to travel in the ceiling somehow, right? So in terms of ductwork, we actually bring all the ducts on site like this, and they're assembled like pieces of Lego on site. So they're brought to site like this, they're placed on the floor, and then some guy gets on a ladder, gets up the top, and then puts all this duct, hangs it, and makes sure that it's all in the correct location, and puts bolts between these pieces, and these individual pieces get assembled like Lego. And this is what you've probably gone to so many different shopping centers, looked up and seen all these services and all this ductwork. There is air going through this ductwork, right? And so in terms of a model, if we look at our model here, this blue duct over here is what we see over here, right? This is the duct, and you have small pieces cut over here. This is one piece, this is another piece, this is another piece, this is another piece. And then you have flexible connections like this. These are flexible connections that are providing air through this duct into this, which is a cushion box, and that provides air into the building, right? So don't worry about the technical names that I'm saying right now. All you need to understand is mechanically we're dealing with air conditioning, and the way we deal with air conditioning is by all this ductwork, and that ductwork will look like this on the model, and then you can see how that pretty much looks like, right? So that's the most complex to think about. And if you want to learn more about that, pause the video. Think about all these different things: AHUs, condenser units, right? Fan coil units, cassette units. Google them, look at them, create a list, and actually start to learn what these things are. The next thing that I want to talk about is electrical. Electrical is a little bit less complicated because there's only a few things I need to talk about, but it's still, there is a lot of engineering when it comes to electrical, right? Because you're providing power to the whole building. There's so many different requirements. So a few things to note is that there's emergency lights, and then there's down lights and all these electrical lights that obviously you see in the building, right? You need to actually give lighting to the building. So you'll see all of that in the ceiling. Another thing you will see, right, are what we call cable trays. So for you to get light into the building, into all the corridors, in order for you to give electricity to, for example, in a hospital, if you have all this equipment that you need to actually power, how do you give all this energy, right? All this electricity? You give it through cable trays. And these cable trays are what I'm sort of circling over here. They go across the ceiling, right? You can't even see it. In a commercial building, if you look up, you see a ceiling, but on top of the ceiling, you'll see all these cable trays. And these cable trays are going, and these cable trays, as you can see here, have all these cables, and this is coming from the generator, right? And then they're really thick cables, and the trays are sized so that it's going to hold a certain amount of cables. And then all these cables are going to pretty much go through here and then go to every single part of the building so that we can give electricity to all the lights, all the emergency lights, and then give electricity to all the equipment. Like maybe if you're in a hospital, you need to give electricity to all of the medical equipment that's within the hospital as well, right? So in terms of electrical, when we're coordinating, we need to coordinate these electrical components as well. So if we look down here, you can see that there's an electrical cable tray over here. So this is a tray. This is the cable tray that you see on BIM 360, this orange thing over here. And you can see that it's got these sides over here, and then it widens up here. It splits off. So you take the cables and you can route them to wherever you want, and then it becomes much thinner here. So the amount of cables, you're taking some cables out of here so that the cable that you need to run through this section is narrower, right? So this is also another thing, making sure that the cable trays and the ductwork are not clashing and it's in the ceiling, right? So that's the second thing you need to know in terms of electrical. The third thing that we'll talk about is hydraulics. So hydraulics, is plumbing, right? It's when you go to the toilet, when you wash your hands in the sink, when you have a shower, all these things, the wastewater. Where is that wastewater going? That's one of the most important things in hydraulics. And all this wastewater is coming out of a sink or a shower or whatever water thing that you're using. And then it goes through the ceiling, underneath the ceiling, and it does like this U bend over here so that water is accumulated here so that gas doesn't enter back up into the building. And what it does is it pretty much takes that, and there's a small gradient, there's a small slope over here. It takes all the water away from the building, right? From wherever that is. And whenever you see on the model something that looks similar to this, where there's a U or there's like it's coming out of the slab or like the level above, you know that that's a hydraulics pipe most of the time, because it's going to be from the level above. If there's a sink, that sink, the water is going to go underneath the slab onto the level below, right? Even if there's a shower, there's going to be a drain, and then the water is going to be sucked into the level below, and it's going to discharge or go out of the building like that. So above this, on the level above, there's probably some sort of shower or a toilet, right? And then above here, there's probably a sink. And then that's how we can identify hydraulics pipe. Another hydraulics pipe that you'll need to know is hot and cold water, right? We know that sinks and showers and toilets, we need to get rid of the water, but how do we get water in there in the first place? You get that through hot and cold water. So hot and cold water, there's boilers and chillers and all these things that will actually give hot and cold water to each of these appliances within your house or within commercial buildings, and they're going to be run with this pipe, this copper pipe that's going to be run through the ceiling. And it really depends on how much water we're supplying. It's going to determine the thickness of the pipe. Even the material of the pipe can change, because sometimes it's flexible, sometimes it's not flexible, and it really depends on the engineering of the whole thing. But what you need to know for now is that when you look at a model and you see this pipe over here, which is like red pipe, or do you see this blue pipe, which is much thinner, this is probably supplying a little bit of water, but then this is supplying a lot of water, right? So these different colors of pipes, these are hydraulics pipes. And then do you see over here, you have this small like L over here, and then you don't have a U, but you have all those bits coming out of the slab, like either a U or like an L. It looks like an L over here, and it looks like a U over here. That's what I see over here. You see like an L over here, L over here, L over here, and then I can't see a U anywhere, but here, there should be a U. This goes down, and then it goes back up. That's what we call a trap, right? So this brown is all hydraulics, and then this is all hydraulics as well. So this brown is all like sewer water, and then this red and this blue, that's hydraulics hot and cold water, right? So far we've talked about mechanical ductwork, we've talked about electrical cable trays, we've talked about hot and cold water, and we've talked about sewer. That is a lot of knowledge that you have so far. The last thing we need to talk about is fire. And so fire is pretty much the fire sprinklers. If there's a fire, you need all these small sprinklers to actually kick into action and make sure that the fire doesn't spread. So there's a lot of fire equipment in the building. So you have a lot of pipes which are going from that location, like you have fire extinguishers and fire hoses and all these things, and they have specifications for certain thicknesses of the pipework. But what you will see mostly, right, if you go to a building and you look into the ceiling and there's no ceiling, it's like an exposed services layout. Probably in like one of the latest shopping centers, they paint everything black and you can see all the services in the ceiling. You'll see, if you look closely, that there's these small fire sprinklers, obviously, and those fire sprinklers are going to be broken when there's heat, because there's a small like element over there which expands. It's like a small piece of glass that expands, or like a small chemical inside that glass that expands when there's heat, and it pretty much breaks the glass, and then all the water starts sprinkling everywhere. So that's how the fire sprinkler works. And so you'll see all this pipe, which is branching off that main run over here of water, which contains water, and it's going to sprinkle all the way around the building, right? So that's the last thing. And this fire is very easy to coordinate compared to like mechanical and electrical, because mechanical and hydraulics. Electrical and fire are much easier to coordinate compared to mechanical and hydraulics, because electrical and fire can sort of move up and down, and the pipe is generally smaller. So for example, over here, you can see in pink, all this pipe work, you can see that that pipe work is very small. So it can be coordinated around the whole process, and you can coordinate it around everything, right? So that's what you need to know in terms of the MEPF fundamentals: mechanical, electrical, hydraulics, and fire. This is what it looks like on site. And so what we're going to do now is go into a BIM coordination example over here. So if we look at this example, you can see that there's a bunch of things happening here. The first thing that I want you to note is that there is a mechanical duct. Do you see that mechanical duct going straight through? That mechanical duct is not moving. It's going straight through the ceiling. And this is in the ceiling, by the way, okay? So if we look at the hierarchy of how we've coordinated this, you have the mechanical duct. It's not going up or down. It's going straight through, right? Everything is coordinating around this mechanical duct. So you can see this is a hydraulics pipe, hot and cold water. This is the hot water pipe. This is the cold water pipe. It's going above that mechanical duct, right? Now you have the electrical cable tray. That electrical cable tray is going at high level, then it's dropping underneath that duct, right? So we come from here, we raise above the duct. And so now we're coordinating around the duct. You have that same situation happening on the other side. That cable tray carrying all the cables doesn't go through the duct, it goes underneath the duct. So we're not clashing with the duct, right? And the last thing is you can see fire. You can see the pink fire pipes, which is going like this. It drops underneath the cable tray. It doesn't drop over here, so it goes above the hydraulics pipe over here. So you can see fire is coordinating around hydraulics. Fire is coordinating around electrical, and fire obviously is coordinating around mechanical, because there's one fire pipe which is above, and then you can see that there's another fire pipe which is running below that mechanical duct. So you can see the hierarchy in the way that it's starting to work here. Mechanical is staying straight, and then you have hydraulics, hot and cold water pipe, which is coordinating around, electrical cable trays coordinating around. You have fire, which is coordinating around hydraulics and electrical and mechanical, right? And so you can see that hierarchy starting to happen. You probably have mechanical first, then you have hydraulics, then you have electrical, then you have fire, okay? So write down that exact order which I told you, which is important for you to know. So what you'll notice is that there are these points over here. There's hydraulic sewer pipes, and we didn't really talk about that because it's not really clashing with anything. But these hydraulics sewer pipes, the points that they're connected to cannot change. So this duct cannot actually go through any of those points that's going into the slab. The reason for that is, think about what I talked about here. This is probably a sink. This is probably a sink over here, or drain. This is probably a toilet. So can you really change the location of the toilet or the drain or where it's coming from? No, you can't, because it's coming from the top. That's dictated by the architectural design of the building. So because of that, we have to make sure that mechanical duct is not clashing with these points, the points that are coming from the slab, from the level above, the toilets, the showers, the sinks, all of that. You can't clash with that. But then the hydraulics, hot and cold water pipes, they have to coordinate around mech. The electrical cable trays have to coordinate around mech. Fire has to coordinate around mech and hydraulics and all these things, right? Even though I say have to, you don't have to do anything. It's just a guideline for us to easily understand what is the hierarchy of coordination, so that we don't really have any issues and we save time for everyone. But that is the whole process behind coordinating. If you look at this image now, probably makes much more sense to you why certain things are the way they are. And if you now go and you look, next time you go to a building, next time you go to a shopping center, go and look in the ceiling. Don't get into the ceiling, but like look up. If there's no ceiling and it's an exposed service, right? Like if it's all exposed services, you can see exactly what's happening. you can see how the coordination process is happening, which pipes went below mechanical, which electrical cable trays had priority, which did the hydraulics have priority over the cable trays, did mechanical have priority over the hydraulics. You can actually go and start to have a look at that, but we sort of touched on it here, and hopefully you understand the whole process behind what mechanical, electrical, hydraulics fire is, what it looks like, and then an example, so you can actually start to go and research about each of these things, put it on your portfolio, show that you know how to do this, show that you know the hierarchy, and get a BIM coordination job.